with ONDC, I feel like the more companies and the more consumers adopt, and more sellers as well, the more players in this ecosystem, the better, right? The rising tide lifts all the boats. And so I hope that you don't interpret this question as me asking you to invite competitors, but what advice would you give to entrepreneurs that want to get on ONDC, but they're just not sure how to take those first steps? Because you've been through it, right?
I'd gladly invite anyone to join ONDC. In fact, this huge scope here. This, I would say, like initial days, we are companies which are doing the most, the lowest hanging fruits, like, oh, food delivery, come on, let's do it, But there are so many more intricacies in this. I think for anyone who wants to start this, should just start attending ONDC meetups, should just start talking to people who are doing this, just reach out to the community. People are really helpful. And just start following ONDC on LinkedIn or on any platform possible.
It's one of those rare opportunities because it's so new. Nothing's been done yet in it. So, because you can be in the beginning and absorb as much as you can get creative and provide things that you're seeing gaps for.
It sounds like a little bit of FOMO here too, though, right?
And no, see, FOMO is there, but some people might see it as FOMO. I feel like the big companies see it as a FOMO, or like that person entered, so when I have to enter. But there are actual problems that need to be solved here. Like she said, right? Like gaps in the market. If you're able to identify gaps in this ONDC's infrastructure, you can build on top of that. So for instance, a gap that I see that everyone asks is, what happens when something goes wrong with your order?
Everybody, this is what happened to us. Our diet, it took so many days for us to get our Diet Cokes. Like they did come. He wanted to deliver at like 10 p.m. or something on a random, I think it was like on I want to say, I don't know, it was one weekday. We weren't in the office, right? So we're like, probably come back like during office hours and we'll take the Cokes. But yeah, it was not a great experience.
Yeah. So that's something that everyone asks. What happens if something goes wrong? Who takes care of it? Is it the buyer? Is it the seller? This is where ONDC is in the process of forming a protocol for issue redressal, right? Imagine like a company coming on board which just handles that. Somebody builds on top of that. So this is a huge gap again. This is an obvious gap, but there's space for somebody to fill that gap.
The thing that I've been trying to figure out is, how does competition on ONDC work? Like, how do you, I don't know why we're using this as the unit of measurement, but it seems to be Diet Cokes. Like, let's say there's like 10 companies selling Diet Cokes as sellers, right? So how do you differentiate one from the other? Like, how do you decide who makes money? Is it just location based? Like the customer just chooses the thing that's closest to them. And so it's kind of like positioning it's about like geo positioning, or is that the main source of competitiveness, or are there other elements that maybe I'm not considering?
So I would say that because there's possibility for so many players to enter the network and start selling, it becomes a game of experience. And I don't have a like an education in user experience in terms of like tech and like apps, but I do have experience with experience design. So and it's basically that the definition of an experience is something that changes your behavior. And so you want to change customers' behavior to prefer you, because there's no other way to beat out competition, I'd say. At least
you're basically talking about fostering loyalty.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of definitely feels like a crucial component right now, where we had we talked about this publicly. So it was my store, right? We ordered from my store, and the experience wasn't great from a logistics standpoint, right? From a UX standpoint, like pre-purchase, everything was great in terms of like the checkout process, or like even looking through the products. The website, it's a website. It's 2022. Like websites are all pretty much great, right? But then as soon as we ordered it, the money was gone. Now the user experience starts to suffer. And so now my loyalty towards that brand, which could have been there, is not there, right? So I'm searching for another sort of buyer app to be loyal to. And I think a lot of people are going to be in that position where they try one buyer app, they have a negative experience, they try another one. Maybe it's okay experience, and so they start like preferring that one. So how are you guys going to differentiate yourselves? I guess you have experience already, right? Building an app pre ONDC.
I think she mentioned that the user experience is important. And it's as simple as this. The person who cracks the user experience is the one who'll get the customers, the one who'll run away with it. Yeah. So as a company, as a buyer app, our focus is always going to be on ensuring that the user experience is top notch. If not, what's the incentive for a person to switch away from an existing platform? There's no incentive. I mean, of course, on ONDC, the costs are going to be lesser. But on other platforms, the experience is better. So a person would always choose that, right?
So yeah, coupled with that price advantage, you do need to at least match the food experience people are used to today, or improve it. And then like keep identifying pain points and keep improving. That's the way you stay.
I think another, you guys had kind of said that there's this pricing advantage. Now, I want to push back a little bit on that, because I think that a lot of the heavily funded players in the food e-commerce space right now, you know, they're offering these massive discounts still to this day, right? I think they're moving towards that sort of profitability, especially, I'm scared to say the name, Zomato. I don't know how to say it properly. But basically, you know, they're funded to the point where they're able to discount things, right? Whereas on ONDC, you're actually you're paying the full price, right? You're paying the full price of the logistics, you're paying the full price of the food, and nobody's discounting it, or at least I would imagine that they're not. I don't know, maybe they are.
See, the food is already discounted, you know. So yeah, so on other platforms, if your commissions are around 20 to 30%, on ONDC, the commission structure is much lesser. It's around 10 to 15%, right? So just by doing this for the customer, the food is much cheaper, right? And if you have a look at this, you know, other platforms are well funded and all of that. But throughout the world, if you see, there's only, from my limited research that I've done, there's only one company in China who's profitable in food delivery. No other food delivery company is profitable today in the way they're running. And so if these existing players continue to give deep discounts and burn money, power to them. But it's not sustainable. It's not going to stay like that forever. And we're seeing money running out, right? And so what we are seeing ONDC as a sustainable way for the economy to get digitized. So it's not about, okay, I raised $1 billion, so I'm going to burn $1 billion, and for the next 3 years, I'll have market share. What after that? Right? And customers, Indian customers, again, like this is a pain point of all founders. Indian customers expect too much for too little. But that's something that will change over time, right? Customers will start paying for the services that they get, right? And that's the only sustainable way for a company or for an economy to grow. And so talking about that sustainable change, I think this is the best way to go ahead.
I'd also push back to your pushback. So you say that like these big companies are heavily discounting foods, and that might be the case to acquire customers at first. But as soon as like it becomes a behavior that is, you know, consistent with that customer, those discounts start to drop off. And I've heard from multiple people that getting food delivered to your house is getting more and more expensive. It is a complaint that I have heard often.
Sure. Which is actually more of like it's moving closer and closer to the real cost of what that is, right? But yeah, definitely it's once you had, I think one of you guys had said like, where does it go after that, right? After the discounting, I guess the answer would be, or that these companies would give, is that we're burning through all this money so that eventually we can habituate people and build that loyalty so that they keep coming back even as we raise the price. But then of course the Indian market is very, very price sensitive, right? And so sometimes you start to raise the price and you start losing people because, you know, other companies are offering deeper discounts. But then eventually once the entire market stops with that unsustainable high burn behavior, then maybe it makes sense to...
believe that ONDC is the only way for food delivery to become profitable for companies, you know. And that's a big statement, but we genuinely believe that. we have seen traditional platforms, like I said, all over the world failing. And this heavily reduces the cost overheads for a company. And even though the margins are much lesser for each of the players in it, because the overheads are that low, it is going to become profitable. And we genuinely believe that.